Hello everybody, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to the 2021 OASIS Annual General Meeting. My name is Gershon Jensen, and I'm Chairman of the OASIS Board of Directors, and I'm pleased to see that a good number of people have joined today. This meeting is organized yearly to present information and inform our membership about the organization's performance over its previous and completed year. We will speak to the annual report, related financial and member information, provide a summary overview of our activities, as well as highlight new developments. Please feel free to ask any questions that come to mind by entering them in the question panel of the Zoom interface, and we'll discuss them at the Q&A part at the end of this meeting. This presentation will be recorded and is available to members after this event. Today, we're going to take you through our annual report, touching on our membership, provide you with details on our financials and budget, and speak to the accomplishments of our member community in 2020. Before moving into the details, I'd like to introduce the speakers who, together with me, will cover different parts of the presentation. Guy Martin, our Executive Director, who will provide a general overview of 2020 and what we've accomplished as an organization. Scott McGrath, our Chief Operating Officer, who will speak to the 2020 audit report and 2021 budget. And Chet Ensign, our Chief Technical Community Steward, who will join us for Q&A. I also like to mention Jane Hannard, our Events Manager, Dee Shure, our Manager Development and Advocacy, and Carol Gayer, our Business Development Manager, who work behind the scenes to support us with the logistics of this webcast. The 2020 annual report and auditor report were posted to the membership in April and provide members with a detailed overview of how the organization is doing. From a board perspective, the single most important obligation we have to you as our members is our fiduciary responsibilities. First of all, I'm happy to report that we have not received any indications of malfeasance regarding the operation of the corporation. Secondly, our financial statements and management's responsibility for those have been audited by an external independent and certified auditor. All of this is summarized in our annual report and shows that the organization is managed in a decent way and is doing well, of course, in the context of the pandemic. The numbers will show and our staff will speak to this. I'd now like to hand it over to Guy Martin, our Executive Director, who will provide a general overview of 2020 and what we've accomplished as an organization. Guy, over to you.
Thank you, Gershon, and welcome everybody to our annual members meeting for OASIS. I was really excited this past year after taking over in March of last year of all of the things that we were able to accomplish here at OASIS. We really took a theme of harmonizing open source and open standards to make our organization better. And so I'd like to highlight some of the accomplishments we've made in this past year. The first and most obvious for most of you is that we refreshed our brand, as well as we've refreshed our website with a new look and new functionality that we think really enhances the value of OASIS as an organization. In conjunction with this, we had an increased outreach and visibility effort through our events such as Borderless Cyber, as well as several placed articles, including in TechCrunch, and an increased blogging presence on our site. And what's interesting is that all of our events, including our new Open Matters podcast series, were recorded and are available for any of you that missed them via our YouTube channel. The overall goal of all of this is really better visibility of your work, your member work, as well as helping us recruiting new projects to the organization. In addition to these things, we made some operational improvements over the past year. One that I'm most excited about is our unified member agreement, which is now in place in a click-through mechanism on our website. This lets all people who are sponsoring work at OASIS, no matter if they're coming in from the technical committee side or the open project side, it lets them be members of our organization and help in the governance and the decision-making that we need to have happen. We also did some work on our TC and open project unification effort, including some initial governance convergence work that has started. However, we have a lot more work to do there in how we actually build our product offerings and how we engage with members. So you'll see more work coming in the next year. We also made some effort and some work on our repository-based work streams, which were allowing us to have the same tool set between our technical committees as well as our open projects. We've done some initial beta testing work of that in some TCs, but we still have more work to do on this next year. Another exciting thing that happened in the last year was that we launched our European affiliate, the OASIS Open Europe Foundation. And that has a board of industry experts across academia, research, and corporate environments in Europe that help drive the strategic direction of that entity. And this is already paying dividends for us with an exciting new conversational AI project that's going to be announced soon, coming from our members at Accenture. You know, there's a lot of things going on with the OASIS Open Europe Foundation, and I'm really excited about the many projects and work that are going to be coming forward in the next year. The other really exciting thing that happened just recently, as a matter of fact, was we launched our partnership with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance to unify all Ethereum standards work under our newly renamed EEA Community Projects Open Project. And that's the former OASIS Ethereum Open Project. That's a great effort that is starting to already get the Enterprise Ethereum community together, where they can do work either through the member-driven pieces at the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance or in our open projects efforts as well. We also know that the core of what we do at OASIS is the member work that you all provide. And we continue to see some great new work coming from our open standards and open source efforts, including new versions of Styx and Taxi, which were just released to help in the fight against cybersecurity. We also welcomed a new Foundation as a Service member, Samvera, who does open source digital collections technology. We continue to have strong support for our emergency management work, including in Europe through the OASIS Open Europe Foundation. We had some new standards work coming from our OSLC Open Project. We also had great new work and continued support for the Open Cybersecurity Alliance, including the addition of the new Kestrel cyber threat hunting language. We started a new Origin project called Origin BX, an effort to automate the verification for the countries of origin of physical products and their components. We also continue to have strong blockchain work coming through our baseline protocol project, and we have other potential cryptography projects coming on board soon. So in conclusion, I wanted to thank all of the members for all of the work that you do. We here on staff are constantly in awe of the work products and the technologies that come from your efforts. And while we're certainly not out of the woods yet with regard to COVID-19, we look forward to seeing many of you at events in the near future. So thank you all for your support of OASIS, and we wish you all continued good health and safety.
Thank you, Guy. I'd now like to hand it over to Scott McGrath, our Chief Operating Officer, who will speak to the audit report and budget. Scott, over to you.
Thank you, Gershon. You know, when we look back on 2020, and before we even think about the financial effects, you have to think about COVID-19, as Guy mentioned. For the most part, OASIS survived COVID-19. We did fairly well financially, but I have to call out in the very beginning that the staff stayed healthy, and that, you know, that's our most important thing. We're able to keep all our staff in place working, although everyone's working at home and dealing with all sorts of new challenges. But with the staff on call, members were served. We had some financial impacts, of course, as members, especially in the beginning, they paused some decisions about, is it the right time to join OASIS? Will there be others around to collaborate? Is it the right time to start a project? So in the beginning of the pandemic, especially, we saw a little bit of a pause in new activities. That said, we've moved past it. We have a very strong cash flow with 8.3 months of available cash on hand. So that leaves us in a very strong position after a year of pandemic. But I have to make note of the fact that OASIS members, existing members, renewed at a very strong rate. In spite of that natural inclination to pause and rethink and think how they're going to renew, but members renewed at a very strong rate. And beyond the kind of basic core membership that we've known for years, our work to expand into other revenue streams continues. Guy mentioned the growing open project program. In 2020, we had 32 people join that program as sponsors. And noteworthy for later in the presentation, I point out that out of those 32 sponsors, 20 of them were not existing OASIS members. So you'll see reference to that fact later on. Beyond the Open Projects Program, the Open Development Foundation continues to serve the Open Mobility Foundation. And as Guy mentioned, we laid the framework for the beginning of the new Sam Vera Foundation. So that program continues to expand. In addition to that, the support that we have with ISO and the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, to support the US tags for TC 324, the sharing economy, and the PC 317 privacy committee in ISO. So that broad range of support and activity in membership activities has really served us well financially. And the other part worth noting, as Guy mentioned, the OASIS Open European Foundation, that was an investment of time and energy for us, but we were able to support that with our strong financial position. Moving on to the actual financials on the next slide. Thank you. So we did see a drop in revenue as almost we would expect, given the pandemic. But our expenses remained as we had budgeted for the most part. And we thought it was important to maintain that investment. And yes, we saw a decrease in net assets, primarily as we had planned, because we had planned many investments throughout the year, even before the pandemic was in place. So even with those investments and that drop in revenue and the resulting, as you see here, drop in net assets, we remain in a very strong position. So with the next slide, we can take a look at the balance sheet, which is what happens at the end of all that financial activity. So you see, in fact, as we said, there is a drop in net assets. The upside to some of those investments, however, you see reflected in the line that in accounting lingo is called property and equipment. We don't own property and equipment, but we do own web assets that we've developed. And that growth in that line is significantly reflecting the investments we made in our new website and things of that matter. So through a year of the pandemic, we come to a total net assets of over $2.5 million. And I can't speak highly enough of the members who continue to work through the pandemic and continue to work their back end office operations so they could, so they could mail us checks. Everyone wanted to renew; they didn't know where their accounting department was now, right? Because everyone was responding to the pandemic. So that all worked well. Moving to the next slide. Looking forward into 2021, when we created this budget, near the end of 2020, we didn't know really the future held, but we had to plan. And we planned to continue our strong investments. And we also wanted to plan for what would happen if we had reduced revenues, pandemic-related issues. You just don't know for certain what's going to happen. And so we planned for a deficit of over $500,000 because we were committed to serving the members. We're committed to keep on pushing forward the investments we were making in new web assets and new services and OEF and other such functions. And so we're committed to that investment. And while we could, right, because as you saw in the last slide, we have significant assets to support these kind of investments. The good news, however, is now that we're halfway through 2021, we're now forecasting that we'll end the year in about a revenue neutral position. Well, we plan to, and we're able to overspend $500,000. It turns out we're not going to, because you, the members, new project supporters, and because of that, we're able to keep moving forward. So speaking of moving forward, let's look at the next slide. The end result of all these members coming and going. As I said, there was a drop in members kind of across the board. One of the larger drops in membership was actually in the association level. A lot of associations, like all of us, we look at our core expenses, and they weren't able to continue the membership in OASIS. but many members, 82.5% of members were able to continue, and they did. And again, we're very appreciative of that, and all our members' ability to kind of focus on the work at hand and not be overly distracted by the pandemic around them. I would note also that these membership numbers do not reflect those 20 open project sponsors who are not existing OASIS members. You heard Guy mention the Unified Member Agreement, and this new set of rules and forms and such allow us to have open project sponsors who aren't already existing OASIS members join OASIS as voting members. So with that new rule set in place that came into place in January of this year, that number of members would be 20 people higher for next year. So that's the good news. And so with that, that's the interesting part of the financials, and we'll go back to Gershon to talk about some of the technical committee and open project results.
Thank you very much, Scott. As said, I'd now like to speak to the accomplishments of our member community in 2020. Our members continued to deliver through their technical committees and open projects. And as such, you can see that 12 OASIS standards were approved from the TOSCA, SARIF, OData, PKCS 11, and KMIP technical committees. But also 23 committee specifications were approved, including a first project specification approved from the OSLC open project. Also, the EBXML messaging version 3 and AS4 profile of EBMS version 3 have gone for de jure approval and became ISO international standards. While not all hit a milestone of an approved standard or specification, all advanced their mission to serve their technical vision. And as such, I'd like to show you these end-of-year statistics. The 2020 result adds to the OASIS value delivered to the marketplace, which now totals 167 OASIS standards, 59 active technical committees, 5 active open projects, and no less than 507 committee and project specifications. Of course, more details of this work are in the annual report that was posted earlier this year. As noted at the beginning of the meeting, we're happy to answer any questions you might have on the 2020 results and activities. And for this, I'd like to ask Dee or Jane or Carol to feed us any questions that might have been raised. If there are any questions, let's have the first one, please.
We do have a question about that new member agreement. Can you give more details on what that is and why it's needed?
Scott, might you be able to speak to this?
Sure. So the new member agreement really allows for two important changes in OASIS. One, it's a click-through form. We've joined the 21st century and enabled that mechanism for people to join in a much easier process. And two, it ties together some policy necessities that we had to change that allow people who sponsor open projects who aren't OASIS members specifically to be an OASIS member specifically. It was a policy oversight, I guess, that we didn't think of 20 some years ago when we created the previous OASIS membership agreement. So we fixed that, and we're happy to get it done, both to enable open project sponsors as voting members of OASIS, but also to enable the click-through environment to make things easier for folks.
Thank you very much, Scott. Any other questions?
One more question about the amount of work that was approved, the technical committees and the standards work in 2020. How does that compare with other years? Chet, would you say it was like a good year or?
Yeah, Carol, it was slightly ahead of previous years. Again, surprisingly, given the potential that COVID had for disrupting the work. We typically run. I'm just taking a real quick look now. So 2018 there were only 4 OASIS standards approved. 2019 was 10. This year we're on track, I think, to be in similar numbers. So 12 OASIS standards what do we say, 23 committee and project specifications is definitely a strong showing for the year. Particularly exciting to me, both in 2020 and going into 2021, is that we're seeing that the model works out, and that the OASIS projects, open projects, are fully capable and intend to move work forward on the standards track as well. So we had, our first 5 project specifications approved in 2020, as the functional equivalent of committee specifications. But since then, 2 of them have been approved as OASIS standards, and we have 2 more that are currently out in their 60-day public review, which will become OASIS standards sometime this summer. And then out of the EEA community projects, the baseline project is at work on 3 more specifications that we expect to come forward. So I think that that's one of the real exciting things, is that we're adding on top of the traditional work of the technical committees with even more work coming out of the open projects. And thank goodness Paul Knight is as good as he is at what he does, because he's the guy who keeps this stuff flowing through the pipeline for us.
Thank you very much, Chet. I just got from our back end that we have no more pending questions. It's good to see that we have been able to present materials in a clear and concise way. If any other questions come to mind following this meeting, please feel free to contact us through the usual channels. You can email us, you can send a message to the member list, so you're welcome to ask anything. Thank you very much for joining us today for the annual general meeting. We appreciate your interest in the OASIS organization and its performance, and are happy to have you as our members, and we'll do our very best for the remainder of 2021 to serve you. With that, the meeting is closed.